Hey, everybody, Dr. Meri Crowley. I love having Larry Ballard on the program with me today. He's got some amazing new content about really understanding the America First platform that President Trump has been putting out. In fact, I've been to Mar-a-Lago. I was actually at an America First event a couple years ago in December. And it's pretty amazing what President Trump is doing. So we're going to be talking about that. But before we do that, today's program is sponsored by um, the Root Brands, the Trinity Pack in particular. You know, I interviewed Dr. Christina Rahm a few years ago, and she's invented something called Clean Slate, Zero In, and Restore. And together they work fabulous, but you can buy them individually as well. Let's run that commercial, please.
Hi, my name is Dr. Christina Rahm, and I am a scientist, but before I was a scientist, I was actually a psychologist. I learned a lot about neurotransmission, and then when I became a scientist, I started noticing and researching how people got sad, how people became angry, how they were stressed, how they were anxious. Heavy metals in our environment, environmental stressors, as well as parasites, as well as fungus, all of these things add up to a world and environment that is toxic. You know, when you have heavy metals and nuclear waste in the land, air, and water, it doesn't even leave the stratosphere. In fact, a mother passes these on to her child in the stomach. So we have compounded this over time. That was one of the reasons that I created the Trinity, which was Clean Slate, to really eradicate things out of the body, restore, to help restore nutrients into the body, and Zero In. Zero In was really one of my gifts as a psychologist and a scientist. There were certain ingredients like turmeric, curcumin, aloe vera. There were certain things like L-theanine, L-arginine that could really help people. There were a lot of ingredients, and I've worked with all of them. But I finally was able to work on a formula that I really think is the best that's out there. It's something that really helps the body because it supports the neurotransmission through natural ingredients. I wanted solutions for all the people that I had seen as a psychologist that had issues. Zero In was definitely my answer to that. I personally take one in the morning, and it's an adaptogenic, so it really adapts to different people, like personalized medicine. I hope you try it. It's something that goes along with the Trinity, or it's something you can take alone, but it is something that can help in numerous areas of your life.
Yes, you can go to therootbrands.com and put in my affiliate code. Now is the time. You have to sign up for your own affiliate code. It's free. But then when you shop, I started out with the Trinity Pack. The Clean Slate actually removes a lot of the heavy metals from your blood. The Restore helps your gut, and the Zero In helps your dopamine levels. So they're actually a great combo together. But I take the Clean Slate every month. And so it's great. Rootbrands.com. Now is the time, and put in your own affiliate code. And then you can share that code and actually receive, you'll receive credit. You can actually buy products and get a great discount. So anyway, it really, really does work. So anyway, Larry, it's good to have you on the show today. And I'm excited about the content of what America First is. And so when did you put this together? Just in the last week or so?
Yep.
Yeah, and so let's get started, because I know you've got a little bit of a sinus headache. So we're going to get through this, people. Larry is a veteran of the Lord, so as they say, the show must go on. Go ahead.
Okay. So basically, what I decided to do was I felt that things were accelerating very, very fast. And I thought I needed to do a series that's kind of a compilation of all the news cycles that we've seen for the last 6 to 8 weeks, putting it all together so people can see the big picture. It can be overwhelming when day after day after day you see something new, something dramatic coming. So what I'm trying to do here in the first part of this is to kind of teach you. They're basically always trying to basically lie to us. And we need to be able to cut through that lie. So what I'm going to do in the first part of this presentation is tell you a strategy that I use that makes me more or less immune to the brainwashing that they do, so that I can see the big picture picture. I can step back and see everything from the 60,000 square foot view. So if we go to the next slide, I'm going to do a little bit of teaching for a minute or two, and then we'll get into some details. So this is the strategy that I use to write my books, to do my shows, and to kind of inoculate myself from the lies and the deception. It's basically like looking at a magnifying glass and saying, well, what can I see now that I couldn't see before? What can I see if I'm above the trees as opposed to if I'm in the trees? So I look at everything that's happening within this world that we're talking about within the arena of politics, of history, of God, all of it through the lens of these things that you see over here: geopolitical realignment, sovereign currency, sovereign borders, honest elections, resource independence, energy independence, manufacturing prowess, equitable trade agreements, global financial parity, shared values and goals. Now, why do I pick that list? Because if you step back and you ask yourself a question, if you look at history and you look at current events, you come to the understanding that if a nation can have control over each and every one of those things, they're sovereign. If they fail to have control over any of them, they've lost a degree of their sovereignty, and the more of them they fail to control, the more sovereignty they've lost until they become a slave nation. So what I'm going to try to be doing is to show you this is the touchstone you want to use when you're listening to a newscast. This is the touchstone you want to look when you're looking at an election. So this will hopefully give you clarity. It kind of gives you an immunity to being the victim of the lies that they give out there. So with that, let's go on down, and we're going to break this down, and we're going to look at the geopolitical picture that's unfolding faster and faster now. So the big picture I really need, I've done this slide before, but I need you to understand it. We cannot look at the events of America, of Russia, of China, of India, of any nation in the world and say that their government is doing that. All of the governments of the world have for a long time been puppeted by a global financial elite who control the money. And they say who controls the money controls the world, and that's because they can buy all the spheres of influence. So we have to look at the history going back 300 or 400 years to understand today. And so basically the British went out and they colonized the world, and they basically controlled most of the landmass and most of the world's population. And they are the people who we left Europe to get away from, to get our freedom. They're the people who are still our number one enemy, not China. China's our enemy, but who really controls the global financial system? It's Britain. Then we need to look at this and understand how they have transitioned power throughout the time. So once they got all their land and everything put together, they said, well, America, we can use them to control our resources around the world. And so they let us basically prosper and become the Navy that controlled the trade routes of the world. And then they said, America's getting too powerful. We've got to transfer power to China. And here's what they said: we can take and create a completely new hybrid economy, an economy that is based, and here's what it basically is. They wanted to create a super capitalist, super communist economy. What that meant was it was a capitalist economy with the innovations that America had brought to the world, but with the control of communism. And now what we need to understand is we're now at a point where the financial system has degraded so much that basically it's collapsing in on itself. The fiat system has driven the world into unsustainable debt. And so now they have to take away power from America and power from China, and they have to have a global financial elite. And that really got started on steroids with what? With 2019 and what they did with the lockdown, where they drove every nation in the world into a lockdown and then printed money 24/7, leading to the financial collapse that we're in right now. So that kind of sets the stage to understanding the big picture of where we are. So let's drill down a little deeper.
Well, and I just want to interject, Larry, today being 11/11, it was also the day that the Pilgrims escaping England and, basically to escape religious persecution, landed in Provincetown on
Mhm.
11/11 in 1620. So it's a significant day in talking about escaping from tyranny from England.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. I didn't realize that. So here it is. It's perfect timing, God's timing. So if we go to the next slide, we're going to break it down. And then after I'm setting the stage, when we get about halfway through, we'll start to get into the details of the economy. So right now, I just need people to understand who is this global government and why does Donald Trump want to drain the swamp. So to be the leading economic superpower of the world, you have to have the following things. You have to control the banking system. That means you've got to control the currency. And basically, that's the shadow government that manipulates that and is coming from Europe. It's coming from England, from the Vatican, and from Washington. And then you have to have international control. Corporations that can control Wall Street. And so basically, you're combining the banks, the corporations, and the politicians to create the global control of the entire world. When they do that, they then control the money. Who controls the money controls the world. The money comes from natural resources turned into finished goods sold. And at that point, it becomes the money that either controls the world for good or basically enslaves the world. And what we've been seeing during my lifetime is that money is used to buy the 8 spheres of influence so that it puts the entire world into a system of slavery. And everything that we're told by the news and by our education system and by our political leaders is all basically lies that are designed to keep us numb and to keep us in slavery. And so this is the system that we're living in, and we need to understand that so we can apply that filter that I showed you in the beginning and see through what they're doing to us. So I'm going to read you a real quick quote here and we're going to move on. The Council on Foreign Relations, that's a big part of the global government's entities of the world. The Council on Global Relations is the American branch of a society which originated where? In England, our number one enemy, and believes national borders should be obliterated. So what I want you to understand is any nation that doesn't have a sovereign border has no nation to be sovereign over. Any nation that doesn't have a sovereign currency has no nation to be sovereign over.
Right.
Any nation that doesn't have a sovereign election doesn't have a nation to be sovereign over. So they just take these core things and they just basically steal our freedom step by step by step. And I need people to
Yes.
understand that.
Well, and that's
How
what
many-
Biden did with opening the borders, literally flooding millions of people in. Some of the people that I've interviewed, like J.J. Carroll, who did a documentary, he had been a border agent. He said probably 40 to 50 million people crossed over into our country. And so, yeah, they tried to literally break America. And without borders, we are not a nation, as you said, Larry.
Yeah. Let's go to the next slide. And this is just really fundamental. And this is mostly specific to the United States. So America is in a situation where these things have to be understood by the people. If you're going to be a great nation, you need to control natural resources, you need to control manufacturing, you need to control trade, and that converts into money. So let's step back and see where America is now. We once controlled all of those things, but then under the Carter administration, we ceded manufacturing to China. And we set back during Carter, during Clinton, during Bush, during Obama, and we allowed China to get control of the natural resources of the world. So that just a couple of weeks ago, they put an ultimatum on the table and said, hey, world, either you get in alignment with China and abandon America, or we're going to cut off your access to rare earth. And that means the whole supply chain is going to be just shut down. And the world said, oh my gosh, we finally realized what a pariah China is. And now you look around and basically I'm tying a bunch of newscasts together and what Trump's been doing. The world now says, hey, we're in America's camp, not China's camp. And we're going to give access to America for natural resources. And then we're going to refine those resources in our home country. So what's he done in the last several weeks? He knew this was coming. He's gone out and negotiated a peace agreement in the Democratic Republic of Congo for what? Resources. He's negotiating or trying to the Ukraine deal for resources. He's doing a deal in Greenland for resources. He's down in Venezuela. A large part of it is for resources. And so basically he's going around the world and seeing to it that China can't control us by controlling the very resources that enable manufacturing finished goods. So basically he's taking the ability for China to leverage us into submission and removing it. And he's also on the other end, he's doing that by leveraging them with the tariffs. And then if we go down further, we see the decay of America. Basically, what they have determined is that America is a unique nation. And it's so powerful that it can't really be taken over by a kinetic war on the outside alone. But if they can destroy it internally at the same time, maybe they can take us down. Yeah. So they've had an assault on the family, on religion, on education, on our media, our entertainment, our politics, our economy, and our military complex. That's the 8 spheres of influence. They control them all. And we have to get them back. And the key to getting them back is up in that top segment where we get back control of the money, and we use the money not to control, but to basically restore freedom to the world. And then the last thing on the bottom is the restoration of the patriotism, Christian and family values, in what brings back the core of America. And within that core, there's one last thing I want to say. They not only have inflicted us with LGTB, with the DEI, with destroying patriotism and family values, but they've also infiltrated us with an army of people who are not our friends. And we have an entire army of military-age men in this country now that I think Trump recognizes is on the brink of being activated to create terrorist activities in this country. That's why he's got guard troops posted in several states, and while he's told every single solitary state, you provide 500 guard members so we can have a quick response team if these cells are activated. So Trump is on top of this. That's what I want people to understand. He is in control. Comments before we go on, Meri?
Well, what you said about the Congo, and I know I did shows with Juan that is probably one of the most valuable pieces of land in the Congo, with assets, mineral assets and lithium. And yeah, they went in there to really destabilize that region. There's a lot of genocide and things going on. So, God is restoring and taking back what the enemy has really tried to plunder and kill and steal. So that's what I want to say. Yeah, about the Congo you brought up. So
On a broader basis, it's the ongoing European hegemony. Basically, what they've done, think of it, the best thing they like to give is to ask people, did you ever play Monopoly? And if you ever got Boardwalk and Park Place, did you ever lose? No, because you had the money. You control the money. If you control the money, you basically drive your opponents into financial collapse and you win. So hegemony has been going on ever since England colonized the world. And what they do is the example of what they do in Congo. They go in and they build resources. They basically drive those people into debt, and then they take those resources over. And if the governments don't cooperate, then they basically fund rebel groups to come in. And that's what they did in the Congo. They basically have funded Muslim rebels to come in, and they've been killing Christians by the millions. And basically, where did they come into the country? They came into the portion that has the most of the resources. So Trump is going around the world, and he's addressing those hotspots, bringing peace to the world, and at the same time, negotiating deals for natural resources to give America independence and freedom. Let's go to this next slide. I'll go through this pretty quick. These are the spheres of influence that we were talking about, and they use their money to control our politicians. Either they buy them, they kill them, they blackmail them, but one way or the other, they control them. And the banks control the politicians, and then the corporations. And Lincoln came in and said, as far back as when he was president, I fear for our great nation, because I see the time when banks and corporations will come together and their power will rule the people. And that's when they went out and they figured out with the election of McKinley that they could buy a president. And from that time forward, they've been buying congressmen and senators and predators and governors and people at all levels of the government. And then they reach out and they control the military. And Eisenhower warned us about the military. He said we needed to be aware of the potential for abuse from the military. And what did that come down to? They want to make money. They want to drive us into debt. And so we find out, if we really are historians, that World War I was based on a false flag event. The sinking of the Lusitania, Pearl Harbor, was a false flag event, where basically they said, we want to make sure that the world understands that it wasn't us that started this war, it was Japan. So that's why they did the things they did to force Japan to attack them at Pearl Harbor. And then we see the same thing with Vietnam and all the way down to the Arab Spring. And the big one for us financially was 9/11 and the Iraq War, which if you take the financial collapse that happened and you combine that to the cost of the war, America spent 16 plus trillion dollars. Well, we spent that 16 trillion and got nothing for it. It was just a big hemorrhage. China and other nations around the world were building gleaming cities. That's why Donald Trump is saying, I'm pulling back to a degree from being the policeman of the world. We'll still police you, but you're going to pay your fair share. And then what's the first thing he did when he came into office this time around? He got rid of the brainwashing machine called the Federal Education Department. And you can see I'm on YouTube now. Couldn't have been on YouTube a year ago. The media is beginning to be taken over, and we're getting out from under the absolute censorship that we're under. The entertainment system, I know this is something you know about, Meri. It's been corrupted, and basically with 501Cs, our churches have been corrupted. So everything that constitutes the government of any nation in the world has been corrupted by money. And Donald Trump is systematically getting back control of each and every one of those things.
Yes, and well, and another fact too about 11/11, World War I ended on the 11th day and the 11th hour in 1918. So that's when Veterans Day really started, on 11/11 in 1918, after the ending of World War I. So anyway, I just did a whole show on 11/11. So
and hopefully what's happening right now is with what Donald Trump is doing, he's trying to create a global reset. And it was Eisenhower who said, is there any man, is there any woman, is there any child that doesn't understand that the principal cause of war is financial inequity between nations? So what Trump is trying to do is to level the playing field. He's trying to make sure that we have fair, equitable trading deals with some of all the other nations of the world, and that they all have resources, they all have the ability to manufacture, and all the currencies. He's come on podium and said it. All the currencies are going to be revalued to parity. We're going to have a second Bretton Woods. And basically, we're going to see probably in very short order, the dinar revalue, the dong revalue. Those countries are now stable. They've got good economies. They've got financial resources, that gold, silver, oil. They're manufacturing their own natural resources. And they are economies that are now poised to come on to the 4X and be stable economies. So I see within the next few months, at least those two are going to be revalued, and we're not going to see Venezuela revalued in the short term because we've got too much conflict down there. But if, as I believe is going to happen, Maduro comes out of office, then there'll be a period of time it'll take, but we'll see Venezuela stable and their currency will be valued. And what are we moving to? Towards peace. Trump's negotiating all these peace agreements, and he's creating the circumstances where we can have financial parity around the world, and that means we have the opportunity for a long-term peace and prosperity. Let's go to the next slide. And what this is basically that slide with the magnifying glass now put into a different perspective. All these things come together in total to create the requirements for peace and prosperity. So you have to have sovereign currency. You have to have sovereign borders, and then sovereign elections. And I want to stop there. There's a whole lot of connectivity between sovereign borders and sovereign elections. So part of this presentation, I don't know if it's a part 1 or part 2, but it ties those threads together to show you that basically the illegal immigration was an incursion. It was a war, and part of what it did was it stole their elections before we ever went to the ballot box to vote. And then resource independence. If you don't have that, you don't have the money, and you can't control the spheres of influence. I think if I remember right, that's where this segment ends, and then in part 2 we get into energy independence, manufacturing prowess, equitable trade agreements, global financial parity, and shared values. If you have all of those, you have the ability for peace. And America, through Donald Trump's initiatives, is correcting the imbalances in each and every one of those. And what he's going to do is he staged this stuff since the first term. He's arranged for the Chevron deal to be heard by the Supreme Court, and that freed up almost 6,000 patents. And how America became the greatest financial leader in the world was with what? We put tariffs on England, and we invented the Industrial Revolution. Now he's doing the same thing with his tariffs, and he's opened the door to almost 6,000 patents. That means America is going to innovate itself out of debt, and basically we're going to do what we did before. We shared the railroad technology with the world, the telephone, the assembly line, all the inventions were shared with the world. And it was said of the American economic system, it was the only system in the world that allowed all nations the opportunity to have a piece of the pie. So all ships were raised because of what America did. It's going to happen again. So that's what we need to be looking at. And if you look at this and understand that Trump is correcting all the imbalances and all these things, then you need to be converted over to the Trump doctrine, because the other side represents communism. Let's go on down, and we're going to start to break these down one by one. So we start with sovereign currency. And they say that basically a fiat currency is just a promise. It's a promissory note. And once that trust is gone, it reverts to its innate value, which is nothing. And so where America is today is we're in a situation, we have a $38 trillion debt. And we are collapsing. We have people who can't afford to buy even the necessities, and they're going deeper and deeper into debt. We're in a real financial crisis. But here's the good news. People think America is going to fall because of this. No, America, the whole world is going to have a reset. But America is going to come back and rise like the phoenix and restore peace and prosperity to the world. And so basically, we need to understand that Trump is under control for this reset. We'll get into this deeper in additional slides. He's going to see to it that we get out from under the current fiat system and we go to a commodity-backed system. And more than that, he's got some real details in what he's doing. He's going to see to it that America is the crypto capital of the world. And I think something I want to share with people, I don't think it's in this particular presentation, but I went to the IMF documents, and guess what I found? They let us believe that India and China have all the gold and America doesn't have much. No, when I went to the documents, I was astounded at what I found. We have more gold than any other nation in the world by far. And so we're looking at BRICS and we're panicking, but we need to understand we got the gold, we got the technology, we got the resources. When the time comes, we're going to go on a commodity-backed system, and the BRIC system is going to be neutered. And then what we're going to layer on top of that is a strategic reserve backed by Bitcoin, backed by the rails for the economic system, which is XRP, and the convenience of doing business digitally. And so Donald Trump is seeing to it that America is the digital capital of the world. And what does that mean? It means that countries like Africa that don't have banks, that are largely unbanked, are going to levitate to a dollar that they trust because it's backed by gold and because the convenience of it being the digital superpower of the world. America's future couldn't look brighter. We're going to have some rough bumps, but every nation in the world is going to have those. So this next slide basically breaks this down. For those who know nothing about crypto, I need to basically give you a little bit of an education. God came to me 3 years ago when I was saying, God, where do I put my money? Where do I put the seed in the ground? And I tell you with absolute integrity, God told me, invest your money in something called XRP. It's going to be the world's reserve currency. And so here's what's happening. We're going off the paper system. We're going on to XRP. We're going on to the blockchain. And here's what happens. Without that technology, you cannot have a commodity-backed system because you can't go to the store and buy a loaf of bread with a tanker full of oil or with a gold coin that costs $4,000. So what XRP does, Ripple does, the blockchain does, it gives you security, but it gives you the ability to take any commodity in the world and break it down to the most finitely small piece. So you can go out and buy, using commodities, a loaf of bread or a pack of lunch meat or whatever you want to buy. That's the new economic system that we're going on. And Trump is seeing to it that we are the leader in bringing that to the world. And now this next slide is the key, the genius to his plan. But before I get into that, I want to stop, take a breath, and give you a chance to say something.
Well, it's interesting that God would bring forth a businessman, and we've seen how he's been so attacked. And me being in the media here in Los Angeles, this is why, just to reiterate, whoever controls the media and the money really controls the world. But they had to be able to get their disinformation out, even if there's some truth in it. If it's with a lie, it's still a lie. And so that's why we have to take back the media as well. And
Yeah,
so it's really good what you're doing with all this teaching and training, Larry, because a lot of people have just been asleep. And the Word of God says, and you'll know the truth, and the truth will make you free, set you free. And we're being set free by what we're
yeah.
seeing around the world globally. So it's going to be
And
a great time to be alive.
now's the time for that awakening. Basically, a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, people weren't listening. But now, because of the financial pain that they're feeling, they're listening. And you mentioned it's interesting they chose Donald Trump as a businessman, but there's a couple of other reasons too. He's God's anointed. And it just so happens that he's here. If you really understand why he's here to orchestrate a soft financial bankruptcy of the United States. And it so happens that he's had 6 personal bankruptcies. So who better to usher us through a financial collapse? And then the other thing, if you go to your Bible, he built that wall, and he's basically on the temple coin with Cyrus, the profile. So he is basically our Cyrus. He's basically our David. He is here to orchestrate the changing from the fiat system to a God-backed system that will allow people to have peace and prosperity. Here's the genius of his chess move. They say he plays he plays
5D,
six-dimensional
5D chess.
yeah, 5D chess. Here's what he's doing: establishing the U.S. as the global leader in crypto. And that's because there's a lot of unbanked people out there, billions of them, and they want for convenience to be able to transact their purchases in crypto and devalue the dollar. So that what that does is that makes our goods cheaper. So that tells you why he's putting all this pressure on the Fed. We have a $38 trillion debt. 1/3 of it is due to be refinanced this year, and it'll cause an absolute bankruptcy unless he can get the interest rates down. I believe it's possible that the Fed's already been taken out or already under the Treasury. They just haven't told us, but he's pushing to get those interest rates down, and that's part of what he's doing to create that soft collapse. And then what's he doing to give confidence in the U.S.? He's basically created a strategic reserve with Bitcoin, with gold, and with XRP, so that people will begin to have confidence in the dollar again, and then they'll want to use it for convenience because of the crypto. And then the last thing is he's transitioning from a fiat worthless currency worth nothing to a commodity-backed currency tied to crypto. And voila, America comes out of this as the economic superpower of the world. Now, we do not come out as the sole world's reserve currency. That day is over. We're deglobalizing and de-dollarizing because the world doesn't want to be controlled by China with the trade and doesn't want to be controlled by the dollar. So basically what's going to happen is there'll be 4, 5, 6 maybe currencies that are considered to be reserve currencies. But America is going to come out of this with enough leverage to be still the dominant reserve currency, so we can still wield power and leverage around the world. We are going to win. And there's the chessboard right before you. And it answers the question that Barack Obama said to Trump. Well, what are you going to do? Are you going to wave a magic wand and fix everything? Well, that's not a magic wand, but it's a needle, and you threaded the eye of it pretty well. There's your future, folks, and it's a very, very bright picture. Let's go to the next slide, and we see that Voltaire said that the dollar, a fiat currency, always resorts to its real value, zero. And here's the good news. I want you to understand, once this resets happen, and we're on that system that's run by quantum financials, by XRP, by blockchain with privacy and security, they can no longer create inflation, deflation, wage suppression, stock market manipulation, boom-bust cycles, national and consumer debt, poverty, and division, and global conflicts. We have just erased the entire board. It's like we walked up to the chessboard and just wiped all the cards off. And basically we said, checkmate, and we're done. America is going to restore itself financially, and it's going to restore its manufacturing prowess, and it's going to lead the world through technology into the brightest future the world has ever seen. So now we get into those details. Now we're going back, and we're going back up to where we started, and we're going to go through one by one those issues that we looked at when we opened up this presentation. So let's go to the next slide. And we're going to talk about sovereign borders. And you used a number of 50 million. I think that's the total number of illegal immigrants that have come in over the years. But I think the more important issue right now to me is who came in from 2019 when COVID hit, because I personally believe that we allowed that other 30 million to come in over decades because it was convenient for us. They would work in our hotel industry, our hospitality industry, in our farms. And I believe we allow them to come, we allow them to have kids, we allow them to establish themselves. So in another presentation, I talk about how I believe we need to give a grandfather clause to those people. The ones who came across illegally they do not get citizenship, but their children should. But all those who came in from 2019 on, they need to be taken out. If we don't do it that way, we're going to have civil war, and America is going to be torn apart. But despite that, we have, as this picture indicates, an army of military-age men who were sent here by nations who are our enemies, who are just waiting for the phone call that says, you're activated, go out and commit terrorist attacks. Trump is poised to put that down, but make no mistake, we have a Trojan horse in our soil in the form of an army of illegal immigrants who are here to do us.
Yeah, they're from all over. A lot of Chinese too, Larry, as you know, a lot of Chinese on the soil, Venezuelans, all over the world. Yeah. No, and these sleepers are just getting ready to be activated. And that's why, just as General Washington saw the angel, and the angel said that there's going to be 3 perils, the third would be the worst, but that America would prevail. So I believe we're coming into a showdown.
Here, you just mentioned something that I need to comment on. This immigration incursion is darker than we think it is. We had the people that came across the border in the caravans, but now we found 2 tunnels, and they're very, very important because we found documents in them, and we found that what they were was not migration channels, but they were staging grounds to train these terrorists. And we found schematics that showed the places that they wanted to attack, which were water reservoirs, which were utility centers, which were so forth. So I believe their strategy is they want to create chaos in the public, but they also want to basically destroy our ability to respond by taking out our electric grid and so forth. And basically, the other thing I think they want to do, is just why Trump is putting troops on the ground, is if you look at military strategy, if you've got an army of incursion inside your border, what you want to do is you want to take out the ability to respond. So I think a big part of what they're planning on doing is going to all the National Reserve Centers, all the armories, and taking them over. And they could do it in just a matter of hours if we weren't ready. And even our military bases, we don't have live ammunition on the military bases. So Trump is set in motion the ability to have fast, rapid response to any activity that happens. So normally, if he had to start from scratch and declare the Insurrection Act, it would take 48 hours to get boots on the ground anywhere in the country. But what he's done in anticipation of what he knows is we can have men in any state, in any place in the country, within 1 to 2 hours. Donald Trump is anticipating what's been done. He is our commander-in-chief and our president, and probably along with God, our Savior. Let's go on down to the next slide, and we'll bring some clarity to the understanding of the lie behind illegal immigration. They want us to think it's a moral responsibility. No, it's not a moral responsibility. And the proof of it is right here. Every one of us, you, me, all of us, we're basically, if we look back at our lineage, we're immigrants, but we came here in the initial wave, our ancestors did, when everybody came wanting to get away from the tyranny in Europe, and we had a shared goal. We wanted to have the ability to have a decent living. We wanted to own a house or a piece of land, and we all were willing to assimilate into that unique government called the Republic of the United States of America. But the people coming now, they don't want that. They are oftentimes, let's go back to our own backyard. And I want to tell you some things that most people don't understand. China, Canada to the north is to this day under the control of England, and they have been training Chinese on mainland in Canada. And if you go to Brazil, if you go to Venezuela, one of the reasons Trump is there, they've been training Chinese that have been coming up and coming into our borders. And so we have to get control of the Western Hemisphere. So one of the shows I'm going to be doing soon is going to be understanding the power shifts that are happening. It's been for the longest time the Northern Hemisphere rich, the Southern Hemisphere poor. Now we have to look at it that way, but we also have to divide it east to west. The power is shifting between the east and the west. And if we don't understand that geopolitical change that's happening, we're going to be in real trouble. So to net this particular slide down, the bottom line is we stopped all immigration from 1924 to 1965. Why? Because the money we were spending taking care of these poor people was breaking us, and because we couldn't assimilate that many people. So when we say we're going to close that border, it's something that we did before to safeguard our nation. It's a national security issue, and Donald Trump understands that. So let's go on down, and we're going to take this immigration issue, and we're going to take it over to Europe, and we're going to see that they're doing the same thing over there. The whole cause of the Arab Spring was to destabilize the Middle East for two reasons. One, because the North Africa wanted to basically have a gold-backed system. They didn't want that to happen, so they had to crush those nations. The second is they wanted to cause a refugee crisis, sending millions of Muslims into Europe who had multiple wives, so they would outbirth the Europeans, and eventually they would take over the government.
Yeah, the Sharia law. Sharia law. Yeah.
And look what just happened in New York. And look what's happening in Minneapolis. They're doing it here, folks. We need to understand immigration is an act of war. Illegal immigration, you just have to say it like it is. It's an act of incursion. It's an act of war. Comments before we go on?
Yeah, up in Michigan, in Dearborn, Michigan, and they've enacted Sharia law in some of these places. And that's what they're doing in France and England. These people come in and they have like 7, 8 kids, and before you know it, people just only have 2 children, 1.5 children, I think they say statistically, and they're basically outbirthing us. And then they vote, then they have the people to vote, the voting bloc. So yeah, no, it's something that we really have to really rise up and really pray against. Keep going, Larry.
I believe that before it's over, Trump is going to just simply do this. I don't know if he can do an executive order or whatever, but he's going to do it. He's basically going to say, we are a republic. We're the United States of America. We're getting back our Constitution, and we're not going to have Sharia law in this country, period. But we'll see. That's something to come. Let's go on down, and we're going to now tie illegal immigration together with election theft. So look at this. This is another history lesson for you. It's the 14th Amendment, and the slaves have just been freed, but now we need to give citizenship to their children. That's where we have the 14th Amendment. But now look what they've done to it. Look at that pregnant woman up above, and it says birth tourism. You can go around the world, and tour companies will be running ads like this saying, basically, when your watermelon is just about ready to pop, book a flight to the United States, come on vacation, drop that baby here, and guess what happens? You, unlike any other nation in the world, are automatically the guardian of that child who is a U.S. citizen. And because you're its guardian, you can stay. And because we have the foolishness of chain migration, unlike any other nation in the world, that means you can send for your husband, and you can send for all of your relatives and all of his relatives. So that one baby being dropped here because they came here pregnant to intentionally drop that baby could result in 200 or 300 illegal immigrants coming across this border, but legally through chain migration. I mean, what they do to control us and to basically enslave us is unbelievable. And look at that picture down at the bottom. Feed me. So when they get here, what do? They get on every kind of entitlements they get SNAP, they get Social Security, and we're going to go deeper, and we're going to understand why Why do we have such a hard time controlling Congress, controlling the House? Because they basically steal the elections before we ever get there. And one way is to seed the population with millions of people who are absolutely going to vote for whatever party is going to give them the greatest amount of Democrats. And I'll give you a hint. The color of that party is blue. Okay. So they steal our elections before we even go to the poll and vote. And this next one, I haven't heard anything about this lady being arrested, but boy, if what I have heard from the whistleblowers is true, she belongs in jail. Her name is Michael King, and here's what she did. She was instructed to change the computer systems in the Social Security Department. Now, Doge find out that there were lots of 100-year-old, 120, 130-year-old people receiving Social Security, but there was something even worse that happened. She basically changed the coding system in the Social Security Department so that if you were a legal immigrant and you applied for Social Security card, you were automatically granted it. And they say as many as 9 million people got Social Security cards. What's that mean? They're U.S. citizens. It means they're entitled to Social Security, every benefit that you worked hard for, they get, and that means they can go to the poll and vote. And who are they going to vote for? They're going to vote for the blue, because the blue is the one who paid for them to come here. The blue is the one who's providing their education. And look at the shutdown; they're providing their health care, etc. That's why we have such a hard time getting and keeping the minority in the majority in Washington, because we're losing the elections before we ever go to the polls and votes. All of this has to change. So Trump is basically now in the process of removing this and basically saying, we're going to treat immigration like every other nation in the world. You want to come here? You've got to prove that you can support yourself, that you're not going to be in any entitlements, that you've not committed any crimes, that you're willing to assimilate into the American culture, and that you represent something that adds something to the culture, rather than becoming independent that drives us into debt and maybe even being a terrorist. So things are changing. So this next slide is just confirmation from one of our politicians, James Comer, and here's what he says: American citizens' representation in Congress should not be determined by individuals who are not citizens of the United States. So let's go into another scandal. Actually, I thought I had a slide on that. I don't, but I know it off the top of my head. So here we go. Here's what basically happens in that instance. We had the request by Donald Trump in the first term to just ask a simple question: are you a U.S. citizen? That's important. People don't understand these nuances. So now he's coming at it again. And the Constitution says does not say we have to have a census every 10 years. It says we have to have a census within every 10 years. So he's upping the date for the census, trying to get it done by the 26 midterms, and to force the question to be asked: are you a U.S. citizen? What does it mean if he gets that? It means that instead of counting everybody in the United States and giving that 20, 30, 40, 50 million illegal immigrants a disproportionate amount of money and a disproportionate amount of representation, basically skewing the elections to the Democrats, we only count American citizens. And that means that representation in Congress would shift from the blue to the red. That is incredibly important. Just that one little thing that I guarantee you most Americans didn't pay any attention to whatsoever. And now we're going to shift into some good news. So let me stop for a second and see if you got any comments. I just talk incessantly to you.
Yeah, no, it's all good. And we are seeing America get free. But first of all, we have to wake up. And that's what the last 5-6 years has been, where people have seen with the COVID and the pandemic and with the, invasion at the borders and all this disinformation, people are waking up. And that's why people like you, Larry, that go and put these shows together to really do the research. We really honor what you do and who you are, Larry. So thank you,
Thank you.
for
Thank
your
you.
service.
Well,
Anyway,
God
keep going.
had me have a motorcycle accident, and it took a trip to heaven for me.
Yeah.
But I agree. I agreed 57 years ago, and I'm still at it, and I'm not discouraged. He said, I'm going to keep you in the cleft of the rock to the last minute. You're going to be like the relay racer who gets the final baton, because people aren't going to be willing to listen until they're really hurting. And what he told me to understand, so you understand the format that I use, audience, he said, base what you say on history, because it can't be called conspiracy theory because it's already happened. Base what you say on the Bible, because 70% of the Bible is history. Base what you say on current events that can be substantiated on declassified documents, so that you bring out a truth that absolutely cannot be called conspiracy theory. That will open people's eyes, and then when they're in enough pain, they will open their eyes, they will stand up, we will unite, and the world will change forever, and we will have the greatest spiritual revival the world has ever seen. So if we shift to the next slide, we're going to see just how simple everything that we do, because it's so difficult. And it's back to Obama. Are you going to wave a magic wand? Yeah, it's that simple. So to get control of this whole immigration issue, here's all we have to do. I look at it as if I got a wedding invitation to go to a wedding, and that wedding is over in Europe, and I've got to buy my airfare, I got to pay for my hotel and all my expenses, and it's going to cost me $7,000 to go to that wedding. The response is probably be, I'll send you a nice gift. But if I'm an illegal immigrant down in Venezuela, and I say that the NGOs and the UN and the American politicians are all sending me a nice amount of money so that I can make the trip to get to America, all expenses paid, and when I get here, they're going to take care of my health care and my food and give me a cell phone and even give me a social security card so that I can vote, absolutely, I'm coming. Trump is taking away the invitation. And what's that come down to? No entitlements, no subsidies of any kind, no access to public schools for your kids, no access to medical services. You go to a hospital where humanitarians will treat you, but ICE will be there to deport you when you're done, and no driver's license and no IDs of any kind, no right to vote, no way to take care of yourself. And so basically, millions of people are already self-deporting, and Trump has used the cover of this shutdown to get rid of a lot of the really bad guys. So Trump is cleaning this out and restoring us back to where we are, the United States of America once again. And this next slide, I think, which might almost be the last one, is just an idea that I have that I hope will make it to the White House. If we want to avoid a civil war, we need to let the people who came here 20, 30, 40 years ago stay. We owe them that, because we allowed them to come here, because we used them. We wanted them to take the lower income jobs. So what I believe is, we look at the data of 2019 when COVID started and said all those who came were sent by the UN for our politicians for reasons that were not in our best interest. So all we have to do is basically put a G on your driver's license. I have a star on mine. It means I've been vented. I can go anywhere I want to go. They put a G, and it says they prove that they've been here before 2019, that they've been good citizens, they've not committed any crimes, and they can stay. And all they have to happen, so that you look at somebody and they look like they're a Muslim or a Hispanic, and maybe they get stopped, they just show that driver's license, they run it, they say, okay, you're fine, man, go have a good day. And that's what we need to do if we want to have peace and prosperity in this world. And if we want to get the immigrants out and keep them out, take away the financial benefits, and allow those that were here and have been good citizens and have assimilated to stay, and get all the rest of them out. And so with that, that concludes this presentation and comes to the humble slide that says, please buy my book, because you need to be a part of the army that is informed, that can stand up and save this nation. This book is based on history, and it'll tell you what made America great. Most Americans don't even understand what a republic is. We were the first republic in the world, and a republic is a government of the people, by the people, for the people, and it has certain requirements for you to be a member of that republic. And I guarantee you, the majority of the public doesn't know what they are. It's in that book, and then it'll go on and tell you how we lost our freedom, and it'll give you some hints as to how we get it back. And then my second book, which is coming out mid-January, is all about restoring the republic. This one is Liberty Crusade, the fight to save the free world. The second is Liberty Crusade, restored republic. We need you to be American citizens in the true sense of the word. We need you to be able to be informed so that you can stand up and cast your vote on election day as an informed American, as a Christian, as a member of this nation, a nation that has a name that's very important, the United States of America. So with that, Meri, unless you've got anything to add, we're done for the day.
No, well, thank you, Larry. And thanks for watching. Now is the time. Yeah, let's take that down. Yeah, so let's put us both up in the screen. I just want to say, this today is 11/11, even though it might not go up until tomorrow. We have been in a war, and there's many that have fought on this country and this soil. And one of the number one things they're trying to do too is take away our guns. But that's one thing, the millions of people that have guns in our country, that will never happen. So we just have to stand up. And the main thing we have to do is we are in a spiritual battle, as you know, Larry. And when Larry actually was in a motorcycle accident and died, went to heaven, the Lord told him everything that was going to be happening. That's why you should get his book. But I'm telling you, we're in that time right now. We're in a major transition. The number 11 means transition and awakening. So we're in an awakening. And oftentimes I was just in prayer this morning and the Lord was speaking to me, Larry, and he said, war is not fun. Nobody wants to go to war. I mean, it's like, let's go to war. Yay. No, it's like, it's something that people don't like war, but the deep state has literally funded both sides of war. And that's what they want, these perpetual wars. I got a tongue twister, perpetual wars. But God is stopping these wars. President Trump is stopping these wars. And I believe the prayers of the people. So listen, thanks for watching. Happy Veterans Day. Thank you for your service. And please, you can go to my website too. I just did an event in San Francisco called Open the Heavens. In fact, last night, I guess they had their last Charlie Kirk tour in UC Berkeley, and there was a lot of protest, and we're at a showdown, people, similar to what happened in the 60s. But at the end of the 60s, when they were saying God was dead, that's when God breathed upon the Jesus movement, and God erupted a movement that literally reached millions of young people and people all over the world. There's another movement that's here. So go to mericrowley.com. You can see I've written different blogs. I have books that I don't really talk about a lot. I need to. You can get my books. It's When God Speaks, A Woman's Journey of Faith. I have a book called Freedom Cry, Sex Trafficking in America, and The Prodigal, the story all about Lonnie Frisbee, the catalyst for the Jesus movement and the Great Awakening in the Jesus movement, which I've been working on a motion picture that's starting to roll out. And the finances are starting to come in for that. It's been a long haul, Larry. We've been down this road a long time, haven't we?
A long
That's
time.
the thing is we can't quit. We're too legit to quit. And so often, just as I close, the pilgrims did land in America, and it's 66 days to cross with 102 people. And I was talking about this on the show I did earlier. One baby was born during that trip, Oceanus, but that baby died. That first winter when half of them perished because of the climate conditions and they weren't prepared for. But there was another baby that was born, Peregrine, which means pilgrim or traveler. And so God is what seems dead. God is bringing forth new birth and new life. So thank you for watching. And just know that, if you can subscribe or follow us, both my channel and Larry's, and share this with other people, hit the notification bell and then make comments. It really does help change the algorithms and helps us get our word out to more people. So thank you, Larry, for coming on. Thanks for watching. Now is the time. The best is yet to come. We'll see you soon. God bless.
See you next time. Bye-bye.